Hi everyone, it's time for a new video. Woo! Okay, so I thought today I would just do an example reading, as I sometimes do, going back to the Celtic Cross. Kind of doing a reprise of my very first video, in which I talk about slightly more, I call it scientific method of reading the Celtic Cross, but it really doesn't have to be seen that way. It's more just being able to recognize patterns in your cards that you lay out, and using that to get the bigger picture, and not letting yourself read each card confined as, existing in a little box unto itself. So, what I would like to do, in honor of Thanksgiving, the great American holiday, is to do a reading, I guess, for the country and the political atmosphere of the country, since as if you live in America, or if you just watch international news, I'm sure you know that our country politically is in a really quasi-laughable, quasi-terrifying place right now. So I'm curious as to where this is going, and to get a feel for the general situation. So I'm going to trust that the powers that be will let that happen for me. Okay, so I also had a request to show you my shuffling technique and whatnot. I got back to that person, but I thought I would, for once, show you how I shuffle and cut. See, it's kind of like I'm a poker dealer. I get that often. But, yeah, well, I don't know. It's just how I've always done it. That way you don't really end up scuffing the cards very much. You don't get any wear on the edges from shuffling them against each other, which I don't like. I like to try to keep my cards in as good a condition as possible. This is the only shuffling method that I can think of that's fast, doesn't cause reversals, because I don't use them. Oh, sometimes you get that though. That's a pain in the butt. And I just shuffle until it, for whatever reason, feels right. And it's not really so much of a literal feeling as it just sort of clicks. And something just tells me, like, yep, it's done. I don't know, sort of like baking or something. I guess we'll just do one more. Okay, and then to cut, this is going to be weird by the way because the camera's going this way, but to cut, I just cut in three, and right from the top, and then this is my last pile, and then I just, like most people do, I take the middle, last, first, okay, and then I draw. So now I've changed the order in which I do the Celtic Cross. I don't remember how I did it in the first one, but it's probably different. And I do it the way you would, bless someone, or the way Waite has it in his actual book. I used to do it in a circle. Oh, excuse me, allergies. Okay, so the overall situation we have is the Magician, which is interesting. Crossing it is the Ace of Swords. Now, the crown is the Knight of Cups. The root is the Hermit. Receding, or in the past, is the Four of Wands. And waxing, or coming into the situation, is the Star. Now we have, I suppose, how the country sees itself. which is death. Interesting, again, too. Environmental factors are the King of Swords, or I guess in this case, you could see it as how other countries view us, or in this situation, or the general environment of the situation. I don't know. We'll see. Hopes and fears. Oh, well, that's really difficult to encapsulate for an entire country. But we have the Seven of Wands. And last but not least, we have, for the final outcome, the Moon. Okay, and underlying it all is the Six of Pentacles. So I feel really weird using the rider-waite deck, but we're going to go for it anyway. Just so that I want to make people who don't use Crowley's deck feel welcome as well. Okay, so let's talk about what we have right off the bat. Let's see if we have any patterns. I'm not really seeing that many. We have we don't have that many. Actually, we have no returning numbers. We have the number 1 pretty prominently in the middle, so that's important. We do have the star and the moon, but with no sun, which is kind of depressing. And they do want to go in order, so hopefully eventually we'll get the sun, but for the time being it's telling us we're going through the moon. We have a fair amount of water. We have water here, here, as in death, and the Knight of Cups here. We have a little bit of fire here, here, I'm going out of order here. Air, we have here, here, and here, and here. And for earth, we only have the Hermit. So earth is our weakest element, air is our strongest element. So that definitely describes our current situation as a country. The economy is very bad. Our amount of earth is really low, and our amount of fighting over it, basically, and discussion over it is high. And our amount of doing something about it is also kind of low. I mean, we only have 2 fire cards. It's almost like we're talking more about it than actually doing something about it. And the amount of water here, well, we have 2 water trumps. Most of our water is major arcana, so that tells us that the emotionality of the situation is a big deal. That there's kind of almost a detachment from reality. And again, that lack of earth is kind of a cause for concern. So let's see, do we have anything else? We have Mars. For planets, we have Mars here and Mars here, because Mars is one of the ruling planets for Scorpio. And Mars, this card is supposed to be Mars in Leo. Sorry, I've got the sniffles today. So we have a little bit of Mars going around. Nowhere else do we have Mars. Mars, of course, is a planet of energy, of conflict, of fighting, typically of war, of course. And so there is a little bit of that here and here. I'm not really... well, we might come back to that. We have the planet Mercury in the Magician. Mercury being representative of the will. We have that echoed in the Ace of Swords. We also have Mercury in the Hermit twice, because the Hermit is Virgo, and Virgo is ruled by Mercury twice. So we have a fair amount of Mercury, actually. And that, again, implies communication, travel, even business, but willpower also. The Knight of Cups is also Scorpio. We have a relationship between the Knight of Cups and death to some extent. This is our only Pisces card. The King of Swords is technically a bit of Taurus and mostly Gemini. So he's kind of an earthy person. But he's Gemini. So he also has a bit of Mercury in him as well. So Mercury is our dominating planet or energy in this reading. So that's important to keep in mind, that the overall energy driving this is Mercury. Not so much Mars, which is probably a good thing because Mars would make this kind of violent. And we might see that brewing, perhaps in death, but probably not as much. We have Venus and Aries over here, and Venus is not echoed really anywhere else. Sort of in the star, depending on how you want to look at her, but technically not. Technically Aquarius is just Saturn related, I believe. I don't think Aquarius is ruled by Venus in any capacity. I'm pretty sure it's just ruled by Saturn. But I could be wrong. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Okay. So now we can talk about, now that we've done the preliminaries, we can talk about each card. So our overall situation being the Magician, I think this is the overall idea in the country that we are capable of anything. You know, American optimism is a huge part of our national identity, for better or worse. And we do seem to have it in our heads that we are capable of fixing any problem, you know, coming up with any solution, because we have this really absurd notion that we are, you know, the best country in the world. And really, that's an entirely subjective opinion, I think. I have a lot of pride in my country, absolutely, but I'm not going to be rude to other countries and say we're, you know, the absolute best. That makes no sense to me. You know, and I do think that criticism is necessary to make a country even better, you know. But there's this idea in The Magician that, you know, we're capable of anything and handling any situation. Covering it is the Ace of Swords. So there's an irony here. Covering is, you know, the obstacle, the thing we have to actually figure out. And I see the Ace of Swords often as a solution. You know, a place of direction, you know, making a decision as to where you're going to put all that ability. So, you know, we think we have all this ability, but we don't really know where to put it or what exactly to do with it. We have to figure out where to go with all this ability, you know, and we have to get it all, get everyone to work together with it. You know, we have so many different interests in this country, but if we really want to salvage the economy, we need to all have a shared goal, and that's going to be very difficult given the nature of our political party system. And remember, the underlying card of all this is the Six of Discs, so that's clearly a representation of economy, of give and take, of sharing, and equality. The big issue in this country right now is equality, economic equality, and is it really fair for 1% of the economy, of the population rather, to be basically in control of the entire economy? I mean, we like to forget that capitalism works for people who already have money, and for the rest of us who, for whatever reason, aren't born into situations where we have money or whatever, you know, the opportunities to create capital for ourselves is incredibly low. But we live in this kind of fantasy world where we want to believe that that's not true, that there actually is tons of opportunity. And, you know, in general, very superficially, there are. I mean, there's a lot more opportunity here than many other countries. But in general, we don't remember how capitalism likes to work. It takes capital to make capital, you know, to make any real improvement in one's economic, you know, situation or lot. Anywho, so now we can talk about, we'll do the linear path first, the more physical stuff. Passing out is the Four of Wands, and that just is general prosperity. I think that's the establishment of America as a real world power. That's the feeling of kind of, I want to say, the 50s, post World War II, that sense of American prosperity, um, you know, the boom of appliance industries, and the rise of suburbia. That really speaks to me of that part of American history, and that's fading out. That's something on its way into something past, and moving into a new conflict here, a new situation that is going to require a really different perspective. And I think that's what we get with the star coming in, is again that sense of optimism, but a broader optimism, excuse me, but a broader view. I think the star represents hope often, but also this kind of broad viewpoint that is more holistic and less egotistical. We need to take into consideration the individual's relationship to community. What's coming in is more of an emphasis, less on maybe community here and herd-like thinking, and maybe more of an emphasis on the rights of the individual. Aquarius, which is the star, is also a sign associated sometimes with social justice and liberalism, just this sense of free thinking and also individuality. And I think that's what we're coming into, that, because of this conflict, in some ways we're moving into a period where every man is for themselves. And we have to make sure that as far as policy is concerned, as far as law is concerned, that law is creating a situation in which individuals can make a better situation for themselves and their families. Because right now the law and the economic system, we could easily say, is broken. It's interesting actually, the Hermit, now that I talk about individuality, because the Hermit is another card of isolation, and we have that in the root of the problem, that the root of the problem is the Hermit. I think part of that expresses American isolationism to some extent. I mean, we also have this, I guess, this idea of, well, no, you know what, that doesn't really make sense. But I think it does have to do with the American mentality of, every man for themselves, that everyone has to in some ways fend for themselves, which is not an invalid way of thinking. But I think the star represents continuing that, but in a way that's more thoughtful of the repercussions of that for everyone. Because the star, to me, often represents, the individual's connection to everything else. The way in which an individual, by acting of their own natural selfhood, I guess, can fit very perfectly with the universe around them. So that's the lesson we have to move into, and not this idea of, which is what the Republicans are all about, like make everyone do their own work. We don't want to help anyone, we don't want to give out handouts. We don't want to give people an opportunity. And that's not necessarily fair, I think. Our crown is the Knight of Cups. This is, I guess, I see this as the lesson that we're expected to learn out of this. And the Knight of Cups talks about that need to extend a charitable hand to other people, I think. I think the Knight of Cups being our crown, it means we have to address our ideas of American idealism. Maybe we have to recognize that, yes, we have a lot of talent and ability as a country. We have a lot of opportunity here, but we can't hyper idealize it to the point where we just say, oh, it'll fix itself because it's America, and not actually really do anything about it. Because again, we have so little fire here. Our fire card is in the past, and our other fire card is in our hopes and fears, so it's not even really a manifest thing. So that's kind of dangerous, I think, to just put all this faith in this and not really make a decision about it. And that's, again, that could be seen as a negative aspect of the star, too. The star could just be continuation of that blatant optimism, just faith in what has already passed. But I do think that because the star doesn't have any other connotations elsewhere, it's not ruled by Mercury. This is all Mercury here. This is something different. It is related to those things, but it's moving in a different direction. I think hopefully, I hope that represents more the first set of information I gave about it. So again, Knight of Cups is more about, I see the Knight of Cups and Waite stick as often about extending he's seen as so romantic, but I think in general, traditionally he can represent like an invitation to a party or something, or like asking someone out on a date, it's that sort of thing. And I think in this case, I think his connection to death is important. Death, because we're going through such an ideological change in this country, and so much is being let go of, and we're moving into totally new territory, which is equally exciting, if not more exciting. That progress is being made, but I think we have to remember that we can't live an isolationist policy individually. As much as we can't live an isolationist policy internationally, we as individuals cannot just rough it alone. That type of American mentality is no longer functioning the way it used to. It just isn't. And we need to clearly address that here. The Knight of Cups also being associated with, well, I was going to say celebration, I guess, and opulence, but I think that's just an echo of what I was saying before, that we need to address that. We need to address our ambitions very much, and not let them become so idealized. Okay, so we talked a little bit about death. The King of Swords is environmental factors. I sort of want to see this as our president, actually, because, I try to read court cards as literal people, and I do think, as the general representative of the country right now is the president, and you can disagree. He doesn't necessarily represent everyone, but according to the Constitution, he is our main representative to the world, and is meant to be, the major face of our country politically. And so, I do think this can represent Obama very much. The King of Swords, as someone who is very smart, but can come across as cold and unfeeling. But someone who is a good decision maker and a good policy maker as well. The King of Swords is fully equipped to make mature decisions that are considerate of everyone holistically. That's what I would say. I think the King of Swords is technically what is he? A Gemini, but I also sometimes see him as having a stint of of Aquarius. That's just a personal connection. That's not a traditional connection. In which case, for me, I would see him as connected to the star. I am a supporter of our president, and I do think he has the right agendas for moving into the future based on what we have here, based on the general climate of what's happening to our country. The Republicans want to just keep hammering home this, and this, and not really take into account what's actually happening, here and here, that they don't want to let go of the country that that once was. They're constantly saying, we want our America back, give us back America. And that makes no sense. Countries and cultures need to undergo revision to meet general world issues. I think that's incredibly important. We can't just keep doing the same things we've been doing over and over again, just because in the past they have worked. For instance, we've also seen how Republican economics have failed miserably, but we keep doing that, expecting it to eventually work. It's really pig-headed logic on the right wing's part. And it does have to do with this inability to let go. It is painful letting go of this past, I guess, glory that we have here. But it's not saying we have to let go of it entirely. It's not saying that American prosperity has to end. But I think that we have to not take it so much for granted, that we have to remember that American prosperity was worked for. It was labored for by people in conjunction with their communities. It was a give and take effort on the part, again, give and take effort on the part of individuals and their relationship to their societies. Single people did not single-handedly change the country or put it on a good track. People working independently, but for general greater good, I think, put this country on the path to success. So we have to not worry so much that President Obama is maybe not the person you want to have a beer with, as people wanted with former President George W. Bush. Which was also the most absurd way to vote for someone I have ever heard of. Just because President Obama is not someone you would want to go to watch the football game with does not mean that he is not a good leader. He is a very capable leader, as we see him being represented as the King of Swords. Okay, and having that little bit of Taurus in him means that he is able to work with economic issues. We need to put more trust in him. Okay. Our hopes and fears. This is interesting. The Seven of Wands. And in some ways, I think this speaks to what I've been talking about a little bit, in that, Americans don't want to make that shift. In some ways, they both have Mars in them, remember, so these are going to be connected on an energy level, because Mars is often about energy and not necessarily aggression. So I think that, the big issue about letting go of this is that, it would force people to maybe it would force more people on a wider scale to really, I sort of don't want to say work harder, because Americans in general tend to have a very high work ethic, and that's also something we pride ourselves on. And I don't want to call Americans lazy, because there are Americans from both sides of the aisle who are very strong workers. But I think that there's implied in this card a tremendous amount of struggle, and it is a destructive struggle. It's a fight that would involve, getting rid of some stuff that isn't necessary. And I don't mean making cuts like the Republicans want to make. I think it means getting rid of certain ideologies that we have, and death can also mean the literal dissipation of material stuff that someone has. And that's another way of reading it. But I don't think, again, we're talking about the individual and their relationship to government and society, and I don't think that means that we need to go about cutting programs. I think we can reform programs, but it doesn't mean we have to strip them of all power and money. That makes no sense either. I think it means we need to understand that the country needs to go without, or certain individuals need to go with less. We can't concentrate the economy in 1% of the population. It makes no sense. Absolutely none. And I may sound like a communist, but, it's just reality. It's just how it works. Or it can't work, rather, in this case. So our final outcome, I realize this video is getting really long. Our final outcome is the moon, which is particularly interesting, I think. I think this means we have a long way to go. I think ultimately we have a lot of murk to get through first. We really have to address the more aggressive parts of ourselves, the more reactionary parts of ourselves as a country. Right now, everyone is sort of just yelling at each other. And, the Republicans really don't have a viable reason to be against the president other than the fact that they want control of the White House. I mean, that's about it. That's really their only real reason for fighting with him, I think, in my opinion anyway. And liberals as well need to perhaps address some of our own issues and our own frustrations, because of course there are two dogs here, two animals, and I think that means we both need to really look at the situation for what it really is. We need to have this sort of discussion as a country and just grow up. We can't live in this childish fantasy where our country is perfect the way it is and it's just going to work itself out. Because a few individuals in the 1% are, going to create jobs. Well, they're not. That's the unfortunate reality. And we have to all recognize that. We have to recognize that there's a really ugly part of ourselves as a country. And that we can't let that determine where we go. We can't let that determine where we end up as a country. So this is a worrisome card. This leaves us in a real state of not knowing what's going to happen. And in general, there's going to be a lot of confusion and doubt and maybe even fear about where the country is headed. But I do think that ultimately, between death, the star, our other major arcana are very good cards, and they're very powerful cards. And I think everything is indicating that otherwise, we have an opportunity here, as difficult as it is for millions of Americans, as difficult as this time is. This is an incredibly important moment for us to redefine who we are as a nation and where we are going to go. It's a really big deal. We really need to reevaluate our 20th century conceptions of ourselves as we move into the 21st century, which is going to be different. It's just going to be different, and we have to adapt for that. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this reading. I hope you thought it was interesting. I hope you liked some of the methods I used. If you have any questions about them, please let me know. Please leave a comment. Thanks. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Bye.